Welcome back to ECW 2007, and just 8 days out from that Guilty as Charged 2007 pay-per-view, episode number 48 of CyberSlam begins with a look back at the conclusion of last week's show when Homicide defeated Xavier in a tables match, albeit with an assist from Sonny Siaki. Despite his win, the night ended badly for the leader of the Hustle as Loki took down his former stablemates and confronted Homicide in the middle of the ring. The group have had a very difficult last few months, with first Xavier and now seemingly Low-Key leaving the Hustle. Tonight's main event between CM Punk and Steve Corino was then promoted by the commentators, but the focus was on Homicide as the remaining members of the Hustle made their way down to the ring. A poor opening, hopefully this segment not much better, but a slight improvement. Once in the ring, Homicide cut an angry promo about Low-Key's actions last week, telling him that he is an ungrateful piece of shit after everything Homicide has done for him. He called out Low-Key, but instead Xavier came down to the ring. Xavier told Homicide that Low-Key had opened his eyes to Homicide's bullshit, just like Xavier had, and it won't be long until the entire Hustle is no more. Homicide and the rest of the group then looked to set up on Xavier, and this was the prompt for Low-Key to come out. Low-Key got in Homicide's face again and fired back at him off mic. Despite his success against the odds last week, Low-Key was unable to overcome them this week and was jumped by the Hustle, with Xavier also taken down by Homicide in a 4-on-2 beatdown. Like Xavier recently, Low-Key hasn't made any friends in the back since coming to ECW, but Xavier did come, perhaps from an unlikely source, running down each with a steel chair. Brent Albright and Chad Collier successfully ran off the Hustle. They of course have their eyes on the Havana Pitbulls World Tag Team Championships. An okay segment, a good performance from Homicide, albeit we do need to change his gimmick, and I'm going to do that now. Complete gimmick change. Hopefully the, gangster gimmick gets a very good rating, so hopefully that'll affect his segments going forward. Continuing our storyline, and as Guilty as Charged comes near, those Hustle v Hustle matches seeming inevitable. CM Punk is then interviewed before the opening match. He is talking about the main event against Steve Corino, which comes just 8 days before his ECW World Championship and Television Championship match against Rhino at Guilty as Charged. CM Punk is not joined by Alisson Danger this time, perhaps a sign that Corino's words did get through to him last week. Punk said that Corino wants to show that Punk isn't a man, but tonight he is going to send a message to him, the Extreme Horseman, and Rhino ahead of Guilty as Charged. ECW is coming to FX, and he is ready to prove himself as the very best that the company has to offer. As far as in-game ratings, he is definitely the best the company has to offer. Another good promo from him, and I'm really hoping that that main event can get a very good rating for us. The opening match sees Little Guido defeat Tony Mamaluke, the third singles match between them, and given their in-ring performances there, a 51 for Little Guido and a 23 for Tony Mamaluke, it's only right that Little Guido's coming out on top. During the match, Trinity came out. It was looking like she was going to help Tony Mamaluke, but she punched him in the balls, turning officially and joining the FBI. She'd been sort of stuck in the middle between the two. She wasn't sure. She certainly wasn't happy with how Guido had been acting, but seeing the success that the new FBI have been having, she seems to have made her choice. Gets an above average rating for her eye candy gimmick. I think that's turned her heel as well. I hope so anyway. After the match, the commentators talk about how Trinity came out to help Mamaluke, seemingly for the sole reason of embarrassing him and making a public display of her allegiance to Guido and Palumbo. The FBI then looked to add further injury to the insult added to injury that we'd just seen, laying into Mamaluke as he struggled on the canvas. Guido told Mamaluke that he didn't belong in ECW anymore and they were going to take him out. While the attack continued, Johnny Cashmere came out from the back looking to help Mamaluke, but was also outnumbered. However, falling slightly behind him, the returning Trent Acid also had the back of Tony Mamaluke. Acid and Cashmere cleared the ring, the first time they've been together in the last few months. Trent Acid has been out in rehab, explained away as being out injured via a Hustle attack, but they take out Little Guido before double drop kicking Palumbo on the outside, Chuck Palumbo and Guido backing up the ramp as the reunited team check on the injured Mamaluke. So it's not a very good rated segment, but it was a segment that I liked booking, and I'm happy to see Trent Acid back. Hopefully those issues are behind him. He spent, I think, 3 months or 4 months in rehab, and hopefully he can now be a vital member of the roster. If we get another incident with him, he probably will have to be released. For now, I'm being optimistic and giving him the benefit of the doubt. In the back, we see the ECW backdrop where interviews usually take place, and Paul Heyman cuts a solid promo, not his best, but he is talking through the card of ECW Guilty as Charged. CM Punk will face Rhino in a winner-take-all title match, and Tommy Dreamer will face Raven. That's not all, however, as Paul Heyman officially announces that Sonny Siaki will face his former Hustle partner Xavier at the pay-per-view, his former tag team partner, while Homicide will go one-on-one with the apparent right-hand man of the Hustle, the Warrior Low-Key. The Havana Pitbulls will of course be in action, everybody who's been in the Hustle represented on the card as they defend their ECW World Tag Team titles against Brent Albright and Chad Collier. Paul Heyman then goes off the cuff, commenting on what he'd just seen, and seemingly on the spot making a match between Chuck Palumbo and Little Guido and Johnny Cashmere and the returning Trent Acid for Guilty as Charged. He also said that next week there'll be a huge match on the Go Home episode of CyberSlam, Raven versus the Sandman, just 24 hours before Raven faces Tommy Dreamer at the pay-per-view. Paul Heyman doing good things for all the storylines that he advanced. That's basically why that segment was there, just to give a strong promo to help hype up those matches that we have at the pay-per-view. We go into the second match of the night, a very short match. Brent Albright shocking C.W. Anderson with a quick cradle after just under 3 minutes. It's not a good display for C.W. Anderson, a good performance, a 51 for Brent Albright there. And cutting immediately away from that, we get an interview with Tommy Dreamer. He's talking to Jade, who I forgot to put on screen, and he talks about next week's match between Raven and the Sandman. Dreamer is amazed that the Sandman will be able to compete after what happened last week, but backs him to take the fight to Raven. Dreamer says that he knows how dangerous and vile Raven can be, but the Sandman has proved he is a fighter. And whatever is left of Raven, after the hardcore icon is done with him, Dreamer will finish off at Guilty as Charged. Returning to the ring, Steve Corino is seen to have joined the defeated C.W. Anderson and is angry that the interview that just aired was shown before he got the chance to speak. He wanted to cut a promo, and he called this the same disrespect that led to Paul Heyman announcing a Guilty as Charged card earlier tonight that didn't feature him or any of the Extreme Horsemen. In fact, it's the same disrespect that the golden boy of ECW, CM Punk, has been allowed to show him by bringing Corino's sister into the dark world of ECW. Tonight, he's going to beat the world champion to a bloody pulp and then march into Heyman's office to offer his services as Punk's replacement at Guilty as Charged. As the rant continued, CM Punk's music hit and it was time for that main event after a pretty good promo from Steve Corino that gains heat to the Extreme Horsemen's storyline. That match, a 71C+. It could have been better, I suppose, but it is a very good match. Corino with a 61, CM Punk with a 76, and it does get the crowd buzzing in just under 15 minutes. I did hope that it could be longer. I was thinking maybe 18, 19, but we just run out of time on the show. Good wrestling, only decent reaction, but CM Punk, after a hard-fought, steal-the-show match, picks up the victory with a go-to-sleep. Corino tried everything, but it wasn't enough against the ECW World Champion. After the match, while CM Punk celebrated in the ring, the focus at the end of the show was Steve Corino heading to the top of the ramp and grabbing Joey Styles' headset as the commentators looked to sign off on the show. He continued his rant from before the match, but with the commentary table right by the entrance, Corino didn't see as somebody came out from the back. He continued to speak for his exhaustion and pain and demanded a match at Guilty as Charged, a marquee match for him and the Extreme Horsemen. Behind Steve Corino, everybody else was aware, stood former ECW World Tag Team Champion Lance Storm. Corino was the last to know of his presence as Lance tapped him on the shoulder. Corino was shocked as he turned around to see Lance Storm, who took the headset from him and told him that Paul had set up a match for all four of the Extreme Horsemen at Guilty as Charged, and he said that it's Lance's job to introduce Corino to them. Next week, the Extreme Horsemen would meet their pay-per-view opponents as the new Hart Foundation arrive in ECW. So Lance Storm debuts with an awful gimmick, which is disappointing, but I do think he's going to be somebody who will be very good for us in ring, and he is introducing the new Hart Foundation. Which members of that lineage will be involved, we'll find out next week, but CyberSlam goes off the air with a pretty big debut in Lance Storm and promise of some young, fresh talent coming to the company just in time for that move to FX. It's a 63C rating, so a very good show, increasing our popularity in 45 regions. I'm not confident that next week's show will be as good as that, especially considering that it's very difficult to get a main event that will match the levels that CM Punk and Steve Corino have given us in this match, but the second last show from the ECW arena, perhaps the last time we'll ever be in that building, as we really have outgrown it. I just wanted to go back to the ECW arena for these last 4 episodes of CyberSlam before the FX show debuts. It's the go home show to Guilty as Charged next week. We've got a lot planned for that show. Raven and Sandman, potentially a main event. It's not going to rate that well in the ring, but it is a storyline match that I do want to get out of the way before Guilty as Charged and before we switch the focus and we switch the plans as we look to promote the young, hungry, fresh faces on the ECW roster.